I am a huge Musou fan. That's Warriors-style games, for those of you who don't know. Despite this, I have to say that for Dynasty Warriors itself, the series originator, it was always a blind spot for me. What I did play always felt a bit budget in comparison to the other Musou titles, especially the licensed ones. One Piece Pirate Warriors 3 and 4 are some of my favorite games of all time. It didn't help that I had nearly zero knowledge of Chinese history, and especially on Romance of the Three Kingdoms. That said, the moment I saw Dynasty Warriors Origins revealed, I felt this one could be something special. Thanks to Tecmo Koei, I've received a review code early, and have put in a number of hours into the game. This is based on my impressions after about 10 hours of play, along with what I played in the demo that came out before it released. So, to begin, here's my one-sentence final review, with deeper reviews to come after that. So here it is in one sentence. Much like how Kingdom Hearts 3 gave us right on the promise of being able to play the CG cutscenes from its previous games, Dynasty Warriors Origins allows us to play the game you saw in the intro movies of previous games, as the first AAA Musou I've ever seen. If you couldn't grasp it from that, this is a very positive impression from me. Let's go into more detail about that here. The story of Dynasty Warriors Origins is a lot of stuff you've seen before if you know Dynasty Warriors, since it's all retellings of the same source material. However, it does have a twist. Instead of picking one of over 100 characters and seeing the story from their fragmented perspective, you're instead a new silent protagonist who you name. For what it's worth, I think having a silent protagonist is a positive thing. I like it. It lets me imagine myself in their situation more. That said, they're not just a blank slate. You learn very early on they're special in a number of ways, and gain the title of Ziluan, which is based on the legendary purple bird from Chinese legend. Your sellsword character goes from faction to faction, working with or against many different characters from the franchise's history. It allows you to more naturally learn the story in this world from the eyes of an outsider being. You see, you're amnesic, so you have the story of the Three Kingdoms told to you as someone who doesn't know anything about it. This is this character's story. Don't treat this like other Warriors games where you have a huge cast of playable characters. In my eyes, this is a character-focused spin-off, a character-based narrative. This leads to a story that's not only fully accessible to people who know nothing about the Three Kingdoms, but is also incredibly engaging in its own right, because you have these two concurrent storylines. The Three Kingdoms situation at the moment from the original story, as well as the greater narrative of who your character is and what they're meant to do. It feels a lot less historical simulation and more, here's a glimpse into a living world, and I think it is absolutely one of the game's strong suits. Helping the story is a great performance from the English dub voice cast. Now, Dynasty Warriors and English dubs have a very unique history, with the dubs ranging from passing to legendary, mimetically bad, to just plain boring. Origins not only has a wide and varied cast featuring huge voice talents like KG Tang, Chris Sabat, Bill Rogers, and Kyle Bear, but there's a lot of interesting choices and even some newcomers. Now, I do think some of the voices are being recorded under pseudonyms, potentially due to union or strike issues. There's a few recognizable voices that are seemingly by people who say they have zero credits tied to their name. Now, the most notable voice to me is the one voicing the Titanic Guan Yu, who was voiced by William C. Steffens, probably best known as Rude in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, who lends a strength and warmth to the voice that really makes him stand out, which he should do. He's Guan Yu.
There is something I want to tell you while we still have time, wherever we find ourselves. As long as we wield our blades with integrity, I'm sure our paths will cross again.
This is also really important because there are scenes where you seemingly date the mostly male roster, and I'd be lying if I said Guan Yu didn't make me blush at least once. What else stands out to me are the graphics, especially in the cutscenes. There's moments in the game that are so well directed, I have a hard time believing what I'm seeing is not CG. There's also the most egregious depth of field in these scenes that are more cinematic than any game that has tried to be a film before has done. The characters strike this really great balance between their recognizable PS2 character designs while also looking more realistic. Some of the more cartoonish characters from the past are brought back down to earth, like Dong Zhuo or Zhang Zhao, but everyone still retains a level of character design that makes them stand out from the regular people of the world. Graphically, the only moments I noticed performance issues were in is some of the cutscenes at the very beginning. Once gameplay started and I got further in, I did not see any issues. It's also worth mentioning, I am playing on a base PS5. Now, we talked a lot about everything else, but in a Musou, gameplay is king, so what does Origins do to twist up the formula? Well, simply put, Origins has two main modes of play that it switches between. Now, there's no actual, gameplay or system changes, but you fight in two very different environments with the same combat style. Most of the time, you are playing a proper Musou game. You have your light attacks, you have your heavy attacks, which you do at the end of lights to do special combos, you have dashes, you have guarding, you have special moves done by holding a trigger and pressing a button. If you played a recent Omega Force game, you recognize this. In many ways, you can tell a lot of things from Fate Samurai Remnant and Persona 5 Strikers are being brought forward, especially in things like menus and even some reused animations. Some new gimmicks include the fact that almost every heavy move can be charged for more damage, which makes them feel really good. And the fact that occasionally in combat you get big red "don't stand here" signals, almost like you're in Final Fantasy XIV, which means you gotta get out of there. Some enemies also have super armor on moves that you might need to use special interruption specials to deal with, and there's some that have to simply be dodged. This means combat isn't just built on mashing buttons, because you have to actually watch out for these moves or special areas and move around in combat. Thankfully, the game has incredible defensive and movement options for this. You have one of the best parries I've ever used in gaming, and you can unlock air dashes as a weapon skill, along with my favorite thing in the world, dodge canceling. Combined with the fact that the horse feels super smooth to jump on, jump off, and do attacks with, this makes me so excited for the future of all Musou games. Another unique gimmick I haven't had the chance to use outside of the demo is the ability to command a small battalion of troops, just like most of the name enemies do, and send them out into combat with commands. This makes you feel like a commander, and you can do insane things on either large groups of enemies or sick them all on one guy and go to town. Speaking of those large groups of enemies, there are new, huge battles where you truly live out that Musou dream. You see a massive army standing outside of a castle waiting for you. Your troops approach. Your commander waits to give the signal. When you do, you rush out as one massive army of 1 as 1,000 into pure chaos, and it is chaos. These grand battles feel insane, and it's hard to keep track of everything. The tides of battle shifts, commanders fight commanders, and you may just be one of the horde, or you can seek glory by taking down these big named enemies on your own. This gets to one of the biggest things I've noticed about this game. Things just work. They not only just work, they work better than in any other Musou game. Characters will say, "I'm going to go do this," and they will immediately do it. Characters would say, "You should do this," and if you do it, you immediately see the results. There's no more of the Musou waiting. There's no more of that Musou jank. It works so much better than it ever has, and when set pieces hit, they really hit. It has a level of polish you'd expect from a AAA game, something I would have never expected from a Dynasty Warriors title. But let's talk about that second type of gameplay, as I talked about earlier. I've only done a few of these between the demo and the game itself, but there are proper boss battles in this game that completely subvert the notion of a Musou. These are one-on-one encounters, which feel completely different from the rest of the game despite having zero mechanical changes. it almost reaches closer to the worlds of character action or Souls-like games, with you dodging and parrying hits that can take out a third of your life if you're not careful. Thankfully, you have sauce in this game to do insane combos on enemies, thanks to super deep movesets on each of the weapon styles. The first major boss fight of the game, which I will not spoil in particular, may be one of the coolest moments in an action game I've ever played. A few final notes. There's an overworld that you explore that feels right out of a PSP game, and I mean that with adoration. It's like what the Final Fantasy VII Remake was too cowardly to do, and it leads to a much more grounded feeling of being in China. The music, either the remixes from older games or newly made for this, is incredible. And it's also dynamic, and it hits extremely hard. When the tide of battle shifts and the guitars go from being understated to being the main instrument, you feel something that is the epitome of that Muso goosebump feeling. Another nice thing is that battles are broken up into 3 distinct tiers: skirmishes, missions, and large-scale battles. These start off as the 1 to 2 room mini missions, and then here's a full map, but you only do some small challenges, to the full story-based, set-piece-filled encounters. It's nice because you know exactly what sort of time commitment you need to give to each one, along with telling you the recommended levels and stuff. Everything about Dynasty Warriors Origins not only presents an amazing future for Muso games from Omega Force, but is a Game of the Year contender in its own right at the start of the year. If you're a Dynasty Warriors fan, this is a must-play game, albeit if you're worried about the lack of 100+ playable characters and, dozens of weapon types, it's better to think of this as a spin-off instead. If you're a Muso fan but missed the Dynasty series like me, this is the one to check out. You can learn to appreciate the characters who helped make the genre what it is. And finally, if you've never played a Warriors game, this is the best one to start with. It slowly unlocks many of the systems in a way that starts simple and eventually becomes one of the most complex and deep in the series. Overall, this is a new standard for Warriors games. I really hope this does well, because I not only want to see the Sengoku era version of this, but the One Piece version of this, and even more of this world itself. This game comes with a hearty recommendation from me. Thank you again, Tecmo Koei, for the review code, and be sure to check out my videos on it in the coming days, because this game is something special, and I really want to make that known. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. I enjoyed doing this sort of review for Samurai Remnant in the past, and I might do this for more games in the future, but this one really stuck with me, and I felt like I needed to do a video on it to really let people know, hey, you should check this out. So if you like this, let me know, leave a comment, and I will see you guys next time for more Let's Plays mostly, but who knows, maybe more reviews like this in the future, because this reminded me why I love gaming. So thank you all for watching. I will see you guys next time. Ciao. Yo.